The Epic of Gilgamesh is the first great work of world literature that has survived. It has an extraordinary story because it was the most popular work of literature in the ancient Near East in the second and early first millennium before Christ. And then it disappeared for 2,000 years and was dug up again and becomes once again a work of world literature in a wholly new world. We'll be looking in this episode at the ways in which Gilgamesh encompasses the whole known world of its day, becomes a work of world literature in the ancient context. But I also want to talk to you a bit about how it becomes a work of world literature in the modern world. What happens when people dig it up after 2,000 years of oblivion, something that's never happened with another work of this extraordinary quality. The standard form of the epic, composed around 1200 BCE, circulated widely around the ancient Near East. Not only in Mesopotamia it was first composed, but then further east in what is now Western Persia, way up to the north in what is now Turkey, further west along the coast of the Mediterranean. Found a piece in Megiddo, just north of Jerusalem. It's quite a wide distribution, and over hundreds of years, translations into at least 3 or 4 other languages that we know about. And then the whole cuneiform world, the world of this cuneiform script, disappeared by around 300, 200 BCE. People stopped knowing how to write this, they stopped paying attention, and the epic simply disappeared. Until, in the 19th century, a group of explorer adventurers, or would-be archaeologist adventurers, really raiders of the Lost Ark, dig up Nineveh, the old capital of Assyria, known from the Bible, but lost for hundreds and hundreds of years. They find this old capital center. They dig up the palace of Ashurbanipal, king of the world and king of Assyria, who had been known barely at all. And they found in the ruins of his palace the ruins of his library. He had had the greatest library in the ancient Near East, and it had been destroyed by his enemies in the 7th century BCE, who burned his palaces, burned them to the ground. But the texts of Gilgamesh and many of these other works were written on cuneiform clay tablets. And the thing about clay is, if you bake it, it lasts longer. So burning it actually helped. Whatever they had written on parchment was destroyed, but the clay tablets survived. And 2,000 years they sit there underneath this mound of earth anonymously. Until a guy named Austen Henry Layard wants to find something to do with his life. He's been working, this is in the late 1840s, in London for his uncle, a law clerk. He hates the law, he doesn't know what to do. His uncle says, all right, Austin, you got to go someplace, make something of yourself. Go to Ceylon, go to the colonies. They got him a little job as a colonial administrator. Make something of yourself out there. Well, Austen Henry Layard is looking for anything that will keep him from getting to Ceylon and the colonial service. And he has a friend, Edward Mitford, who also has a job waiting for him in Ceylon. But Mitford does not want to take the usual route by sea to get around to Ceylon because Mitford gets seasick. And Mitford would really rather go the land route all the way across Asia, down through India to Ceylon, not only because of his seasickness, but because he also loves bird watching. Typical Victorian, has an obsession, his is bird watching. So he wants to bird his way across the Middle East and India, Persia and so on, Kashmir, down to Ceylon. And Layard thinks this is just the thing. And maybe if they wander around long enough, he can find some excuse to not go and be a respectable citizen in Ceylon. So they wander around, spend some time in Turkey, spend some time in Greece, spend some time in the Levant, and then Layard starts to hear these mysterious mounds in what is now known as Iraq, and that they thought that stuff is buried there, maybe some stuff of biblical interest, maybe old Assyrian Babylon that they know is down there, just mounds of mud, towns on top of them, they don't know what's there. And Layard decides he wants to find out. A few others are jockeying for this, but no one has found anything very spectacular. He goes to Mosul, now a major city still in Iraq, which was the site of Nineveh, the Assyrians' capital in the 8th, 7th century BCE. And he starts digging, and he lucks out, and he finds this palace. This makes him famous. But he knows if he wants to do more of this digging, he has to raise money somehow, because no one cared about these ruins in the middle of nowhere. Greece, okay, if you're finding some great Greek sculptures, you can get funding for that. But the Middle East, no one really cared. No one in Europe cared. In the Middle East, they didn't care about these old pagan relics of the pre-Islamic times either. So Layard's, a friend of his says, well, you know, what you need to do is you need to write an adventure story. Really write a blockbuster, and then you can make some money, and then you can go back and do it. So he does. And very cannily, when he comes home, he writes, hitting all of the high points of his stories. He writes the account, which is basically how he found Nineveh, And he has here a picture of the sort of mound of Nineveh, what's left of it there in Mosul. But the title tells you a good deal. Nineveh and its Remains, with an account of a visit to the Chaldean Christians of Kurdistan and the Yazidis, or devil worshippers, and an inquiry into the manners and arts of the ancient Assyrians. So he's hitting every part of the audience. Adventure in imperial travel lands, Christian versus others, devil worshippers, sounds sort of interesting, and the manners of the ancient Assyrians by Austin Henry Layard, Esquire. That's this legal profession he never wanted to have. And he has this illustration. It's very interesting to me. Who was interested in this stuff? Unearthing, elements of biblical history, known vaguely, interest in the Holy Land and its extension. This he's publishing in 1849. My particular copy that I picked up has in it the subscription from the Fitzwilliam Book Club. And this tells you a lot about the readership in 1849. Books were expensive. You could belong to a lending library, and then you could join and share a subscription to the library, and then you'd have a little sort of chart of who would get to read the book when. And just a list of the half a dozen people. We have Edward Alcock, Esquire, so he's probably a lawyer. Next, after he's read it, is the Reverend Charles Graves, so you have a priest. Then you have James Percival Graves, Esquire, probably his brother or his son, who's now become a lawyer. Then you have Miss Maloney. Then you have the Very Reverend the Dean of Kildare. And then you have Miss Featherston. Then you have Arthur Graver, Esquire, and John Stanford, Esquire, all on Fitzwilliam Square or Upper Mont Street or St. Stephen's Green. So this is in Dublin. So this is the Anglo-Irish gentry, clergy, and the ladies with leisure who are going to read about this kind of journey to the Holy Land extension. And Layard, so he does this lovely book, profusely illustrated, plays up all the human drama of the devil worshippers. They're not worshiping the devil, but nonetheless, it becomes a bestseller. In fact, his dream becomes true. He soon becomes a member of parliament. He becomes an expert. He later becomes an ambassador. And then he does more excavations. And his next book, you can see, now he's a bestseller, and it's beautiful, embossed. He finds these huge winged bulls. You can see here, this is from the frontispiece to his volume, A Reconstruction of the Palace of Nineveh. Massive winged bulls with 5 legs each, like 8 feet high, and now the whole book takes the form of a winged bull, and he tells more of these stories. So he digs up what turns out to be the Library of Ashurbanipal.